Hello and welcome to today's video. I'm extremely excited because today I sat down with Amazon PPC expert Destaney Wishon and basically had a rapid fire Amazon PPC Q&A. So basically I went into the AMZ Escape Plan Facebook group, and if you're not already a member, be sure to join. Link will be in the description. Went into our Facebook group and asked what their top Amazon PPC questions were, and then compiled that into a list along with some of the top Amazon PPC questions that I have for my own Amazon PPC campaigns, put this into a giant list, and then reached out to my Amazon PPC friend and Amazon PPC expert, Destaney Wishon, who I've been following for some time now, who's extremely helpful and extremely knowledgeable in the Amazon PPC space to essentially answer these questions for myself and for us. And I'm sure that you're gonna find this content valuable because after our interview, I went back and I'm still updating our Amazon PPC campaigns based on the insights that Destaney shared, which I'm so excited about and I'm so thankful for, because literally this information could literally cost easily $100 or more for a consultation. You're getting it for free. And all that we ask in return is if you find the video helpful, whether you're a brand new Amazon seller that you have yet to set up your first campaign and you're just kind of getting your feet wet, or you're an existing Amazon seller, you're already running Amazon PPC campaigns, and you want to significantly increase the profitability of those campaigns and the results from those campaigns. And if you find the video helpful and valuable in helping you with those efforts, then all that we ask is that you consider liking the video, drop a comment with any questions that you have, any insights that you learned from the video. It would be great to share any points that you would like to make. Let us know in the comments. And of course, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell because first, we hope to have Destaney on again in the future because it was so valuable and I'm so excited to get into the video. And secondly, because we'll have a lot of other great interviews and tutorials coming very, very soon. I'm telling you, we have a lot of great stuff coming soon. So I want to make sure you don't miss out. And then last thing before we get into the video, we cover, like I said, we cover a lot of content and a lot of different resources. Links to all the resources that we discuss and cover here in the videos will be in the description section, just so you know where everything is. All the links to Destaney's social accounts, her Facebook, her LinkedIn, as well as her agency's website, which are phenomenal. And I'm telling you, you can check it out right now. They're awesome places for free and actually valuable Amazon PPC information, which is very, very rare, which is why we have her on the channel. So without any further adu, let's go ahead and get into the video. Destaney Wishon, welcome to the channel. Super excited to have you here. And in this video, we're gonna be kind of going through a rapid fire Q&A, all things Amazon PPC with Amazon PPC expert, Destaney Wishon. And Destaney, if you wouldn't mind, briefly kind of before we begin, let everyone know kind of how you started off, how you got into the Amazon PPC space, and then kind of what you've done with that. I know, but I'm sure everyone would kind of love to know, and you can kind of dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So I actually got started in Amazon advertising like 4 years ago. I got started at a local agency in the area that was basically just looking for, a digital media specialist. And I kind of dove in and started learning anything and everything about Amazon advertising. And within my time at that agency, they scaled extremely quickly. So towards the end of my time, I was managing advertising on platform for a really large CPG company. So I was managing like $1 million of spend a quarter, working with kind of, the Amazon managed teams, working on brand awareness and that type of thing. And that's actually when I kind of found my partner, Taylor Binnerud. So Taylor actually started Better AMS, and it was initially one of the first AMS agencies out there. So for you OG sellers, AMS was the platform strictly for, vendors pretty much, and you could kind of work around to get into it. And that was also where you used to only be able to run sponsor brands and sponsored display. So I basically met Taylor and we kind of dove in full-hearted and added sponsored products and the Seller Central side of things to the business and haven't looked back since. So we still only focus on Amazon advertising at scale, but it's been incredible.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I know with things always changing, it's always fun. It can be fun, it can be stressful too, but no, that's awesome. And one thing that I would like to add that I think a lot of people don't know, and kind of the reason I brought you on, which I'm, by the way, extremely thankful for your time. What we're going to dive into, I'm really excited about some of the questions. It's going to be a compilation of questions that have been asked multiple times in my Facebook group and some of the comment sections of my videos that maybe, I'm not the best to answer that. Questions that I have personally for my own Amazon PPC campaigns. So kind of a conglomeration of that. And I followed you, Destaney, and you may not even know this, but found you originally through the Brax Amazon FBA group. Really great group. I've mentioned them before. Originally found a video of you there. You went, I think it was like a 2-hour long video. So you went like really in depth. And People are interested in that as well. I'll link that in the description with everything else that we discuss. Really great video, super, super helpful. And what I find personally as an Amazon seller, and I'm trying to stay on top of everything, and of course, my goal is just to share everything that I learned that's valuable, is that a lot of, at least personally, kind of Amazon PPC experts, quote unquote, that I meet are kind of a little bit more reluctant, somewhat, understandably, but to share some of their insights or their knowledge. And you really I'm following I've read I think every single article that you posted on LinkedIn and a lot of your different posts, follow you on Facebook, and you really do dive in and provide value. So, you're not just a PPC expert out there, and we're not just going to cover, basic, high level, general, everyone should be advertising on Amazon. If you sell on Amazon, it's very important. Like, we all know that. We just kind of want to know, how can we improve our campaigns, get better results, all that kind of stuff. So that's just one thing I wanted to add. Really, really appreciate your time. Obviously, we already discussed, we got a lot going on this week, so much appreciated. And with all this being said, we'll go ahead and kind of dive into the Q&A. So
amazing. And thank you so much for that.
Oh yeah, of course, absolutely. You deserve it. So I'm excited for this. And the first question, of course, that's on a lot of sellers' minds, especially right now with the current situation, is with a lot of sellers, myself included, with one of our products in particular, sales are way down, right? Demand for certain industries are completely shut. So if we're kind of struggling and we're seeing significantly less sales, what is maybe some of your insight on how an Amazon seller should kind of deal with that on an Amazon PPC perspective?
Yeah,
like
100%.
Shut off completely, reduce, because I know shutting off campaigns isn't the best thing, and it's generally not a good strategy, but it's a unique time, and just kind of maybe some of your insight on that.
Yeah, definitely. So one big thing that you called out, and I kind of want to preface before we dive into a lot of questions, is I'm a big believer that there's no one size fits all solution. I don't even like to make crazy definitive statements. So a lot of what I do is kind of an ask me anything format, so I can provide the best response. So with that being said, one of the first things we're recommending to do during, COVID Amazon advertising is to look at, smaller timeframes of data sets. Because a lot of people, will kind of look at year-to-date analysis, or they'll basically be like, this is my top seller and has always been my top seller, so I'm going to continue to bid aggressively and just hope everything works out. But in reality, there's so many external factors that are affecting, your sales and conversion, like your shipping time and things like that. And, you could have a bunch of competitors out of stock, so maybe you're seeing an influx of purchases. So what we're recommending is, pull your business report over smaller timeframes, maybe, last 7 days, things like that. Analyze your conversion and see what's doing better and what's doing worse. And if you have certain products that are doing worse due to external factors like crazy lead time or like anything like that, you can potentially pause your Amazon advertising. I probably would not recommend it. What I would do is go in and aggressively cut bids and make sure I can at least be profitable in the conversions I am getting and the people that are still willing to wait, for delayed shipping.
Yep, totally understand that. Yep, that's a good perspective. I will be completely honest. For one product in particular, I just completely shut off the campaigns, which I haven't done probably in a long time. I mean, I try not to do that. That's also based on some of the advice that you've given, that generally it's not a good. So I might have to revisit that, and that's probably going to happen with some of the questions that I ask you. So that's great perspective, and I do appreciate the preface of, and that's something else that I've, just as an Amazon seller myself, learning more about the Amazon PPC world, can never get enough. But yeah, that multiple. I mean, I respect you, and there's others that I respect that I've been following as well, and will many times have a lot of overlap, and that's always good to find, and that should happen. But there are definitely kind of that 20% or that of the Venn diagram, that there's kind of like some harsh, like, oh no, this is the way to do it, or this way.
Yeah.
So it's definitely multiple, and I appreciate you kind of letting us know. So that's great. That's really good perspective. I'm going to be changing my maybe some of my strategy now based on that alone. And then next question is, so this kind of goes in the same or similar line, and that is, if an Amazon seller sees that they will be running out of stock, and there's no way to kind of prevent it, they will not get shipment in time, they're going to run out. Something, Instagram influencer promoted it, it went viral, it's awesome. But, in that case of, I know I'm going to be running out of stock, and I know that if I'm running, any kind of advertising, Google ads, Amazon ads, anything like that, then I'm going to be making less per sale than I could if I just, cut off advertising. But at the same time, with turning off the advertising with the algorithm, does that really screw things up? Similar kind of thought. What is maybe some of your perspective on that, if I know I'm going to run out of stock?
Yeah, we've ran into that scenario quite a few times lately, just, with shipments being delayed overseas and things like that. And, the biggest thing we've looked at is just focusing extremely on profitability. So we have paused campaigns that are for different purposes, like top of the funnel, winning market share. That's not going to be a very high profitability, and we don't necessarily need it at this point in time. So we have definitely paused those campaigns or just greatly reduced the budgets. So we're only spending on $1 to $2 a day on them. Doesn't make that big of a difference. But in general, the biggest shift is, going from a scalability focus to profitability, cutting bids. It's my cat, sorry. And focusing, strictly on profitability or pausing if need be. If it makes sense and you're out of inventory, I don't see an issue with pausing.
Gotcha. Yep. Absolutely. No, totally makes sense. And I definitely agree with that. And that's something that, maybe as a smaller brand, I'm still kind of growing my brand. I think a lot of newer Amazon sellers are as well, brand new, to the market and do a lot of this. It's a great point that you mentioned of all these different strategies that you have going on. It's not just, I think a lot of sellers just focus solely, and I used to, and I'm kind of growing out of that, of only focusing on ACoS. And that's actually another question, quick. Do you say ACoS or ACoS?
I think I say ACoS on the fly.
You say ACoS. Okay, that's good to know. I'm always curious. I have no idea. I mispronounce a lot. I grew up in Toronto and then moved to Arkansas and then was Cincinnati. So a lot of my grammar, a lot of my pronunciation is bad. So I'm always curious. So that's good to know. And then that actually brings me kind of to my next question, because that is an important question that a lot of Amazon sellers have. And it is, I would assume, an important metric that you do look at or analyze among other, other key metrics. That is ACoS. And what are some of your thoughts, maybe, insight of how your clients go about doing this, or maybe some of your recommendations for how an Amazon seller could or maybe should go about selecting their target ACoS? And also any insight you have around that of this is important, but also look at this, anything like that. Just kind of understanding our target ACoS.
Yeah, definitely. My cat is really trying to snuggle up right now. But the biggest thing is you have to understand the philosophy behind Amazon advertising. It's all about building that brand awareness, but even more so than being a brick and mortar brand awareness play is it's an algorithm play. So the more sales you drive in the long run, the better you're going to rank organically. And, the more market share, if you have a subscribe and save a consumable product, the more people that are going to purchase later on. So if you understand the mindset behind it, that's truly what matters. And then you can make an ACoS decision, ACoS decision based off your cash flow. So as a general rule of thumb, our personal advertisers usually run at break even. So if you have a 30% profit margin, we recommend running at a 30% ACoS, because you don't need to make money on ads. Where you're going to make that additional money is by improving your organic rank. Now, if you're running, a lot of search, find, buys, things like that, it's the exact same philosophy. You're not making money on those initially because you're just selling them at a reduced price. You're making money 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now when you finally get page one. Exact same thing with Amazon advertising. I mean, we have some brands that shoot for a 70% ACoS and they have a 40% margin because they're growing market share. So the better they rank, and when they get to number one, you're going to get so much more in sales that you can't even technically equate to your PPC. So absolutely, that's kind of my favorite answer, but it is a cash flow game. And if you don't have cash flow to buy your next round of inventory, you probably shouldn't be running at break even because it doesn't make sense. You still got to run a business.
Yep, absolutely. No, I totally understand. And one thing I will add to that, and of course you have a lot more data on this, but something that my wife and I, so it's kind of my wife and I have our team of our private label team right now, mostly Amazon. We're starting to branch out. We had a lot more plans, a lot more aggressive plans, but with COVID-19, it's kind of thrown things askew. Expanding on a Shopify and really growing out our Etsy and eBay presence as well. But we were recently analyzing, again, no formal regression analysis model, just like basic, looking at over the past, I believe it was year period. And my wife does all the kind of the financing and logistics. I do the Amazon advertising side and copywriting and we wear all the hats. But we looked at the past year and compared, and we were kind of looking at our total ACoS, but we looked at ACoS and its correlation with, or ACoS and its correlation with total profit. So not profit percentage, but total profit from Amazon sales specifically. And we found that the closer that we were to break even, the more our total profit was almost every single time. It was almost like perfectly. And again, it wasn't, we could have had a larger data set. We could have, that's only, for our products, and it'd be interesting to see other industries and all of that to really run like a formal, a really in-depth analysis. That was something right off the bat consistently every time that we kind of push closer within that kind of break even, that our overall profit was maximal. So that was, we kind of knew that, but to see that again, especially like looking at the broad view, it was crazy. Like every single time, it was like a clear pattern, and of course it makes sense. I mean, if you're getting sales for specific keywords and growing out and finding more keywords from the search term report or from wherever else, adding those in, getting sales for those keywords and all of that, it really does have this kind of exponential effect. So I can personally attest to that. It's not just like this theory, because I used to kind of think that like that makes sense in theory, but does it actually work? It does. And again, with that being said, the cash flow constraint, that's why I wish all my products were digital products. That'd be awesome. Because it would just be a whole different game. I mean, it'd be like so much easier. That's like a whole skill set of just managing inventory. But really good perspective. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't. It's something I'm starting to look at. I could do a better job just looking at the kind of the tacos, right, or the total ACoS, and how this drives profitability overall. And it'd be interesting as we expand off of Amazon to see how even Amazon advertising can affect outside as well. But anyway, I can go down like a whole. That's one thing I need to be careful of. I could go down like a whole rabbit hole with any of these questions. So I want to make sure. But that's very insightful. And then so another kind of question, again, these are no particular order. And some of these questions are for kind of at different levels. But what is kind of your process? Maybe you have some tips or any tools that you use for identifying long tail keywords. And maybe you want to briefly kind of describe, because I followed a lot of your content. It really encouraged me to really do a lot more long tail keyword research and add a lot more long tail keywords to my own campaigns. But maybe briefly describe kind of what is a long tail keyword, why it's important, and then maybe your overall, some of your process or ways of kind of identifying those big lists of juicy long tail keywords.
Yeah, 100%. So this is kind of one of the more underutilized areas with Amazon advertising, in my opinion, because everyone knows to bid on their top 5 or so 10 most relevant keywords. If you're selling socks, most people know to bid on socks because it's exactly what their product is. But when you start looking at long tail keywords, what you're looking for is the actual search terms people are typing into the search bar that could still drive, a correlated purchase with your product. So when I think of a long tail keyword, take something like socks, that would be a main keyword, a ranking type style keyword. Now, figure out a little bit more details about it. Men's white socks, that would probably be more long tail, or men's socks for running. And the most people's mindset is, no one's searching that. Like, no one's going to type that in. So they don't think to bid on it. But in reality, there's so many people on Amazon. And if you go through your search term report, you'll see this, that there's so many different search terms that you are converting on that are much more specific. Now, why we recommend pulling them out of your search term report and bidding on them in, a manual campaign is because at its core, Amazon advertising is still an auction. So the more people you have bidding on any term, the more expensive it's probably going to be. So in a scenario like socks, anyone and everyone knows to bid on that. It's going to be much more expensive because they want to win socks. But when you type in men's socks for running, hardly anyone's actually going to think to bid on that. So at its core, it's going to be cheaper because, there's less people in the auction bidding on it. Now, one of the kind of questions I always get back to that is, well, if I'm bidding on it in broad, it's already going to be covered. But the problem with bidding on it in just broad is that it is kind of a shotgun approach. You're showing up for all of these different broad placements through a keyword, but we want to pull those out and bid on them exactly. Like, pull out the long tail search term that you pull from your search term and bid on it with your own bid in a lower CPC. So that's kind of a quick rundown on my opinion on long tail keywords versus a main keyword. What kind of keyword research we do is through the search term report. And something to note is the differentiation between a keyword and a search term, because I think that's still a little bit confusing to people.
Absolutely.
A keyword is what you legitimately upload and put into your campaign in broad, phrase, and exact. A search term is what someone typed into the physical search bar that drove them to click on your ad. So if you're bidding on socks and they typed in women's socks for running, then you're going to still see that in your search term report. So pulling out all those long tail search terms from your search term report is the easiest because we have that data set. I love merchant words for finding long tail keywords, mainly because when you get a list from merchant words, it gives you only keywords with the root socks. Helium tin's also fantastic, but helium tin I think utilizes more of, like a regression style of relevancy. So I love both of those, but I mean, keeping it simple, use your search term report, run auto campaigns to collect data, run in broad and phrase to collect data. So yeah.
Yeah, so that could easily be a quick win if someone's kind of not utilizing that at all. And I've kind of noticed that more of, I've seen a lot, just Amazon sellers that I've kind of been talking with that just have like campaigns with, 6 to 10 keywords and that's it.
Yeah.
And I've again begun utilizing, I'm doing a lot of testing and super messy too, by the way. I could do a lot of cleaning up, but of just targeting significantly more, like I have one campaign, I think it's like 800 longer tail keywords. And I mainly went through to make sure, okay, these keywords are specific, to this product and all of that, and seeing sales, and a decent amount of sales given and it is significantly more profitable than some of my main keywords. And so one kind of follow-up question I have to that is, so do you utilize then both, maybe with a different strategy of both those kind of shorter tail keywords for maybe ranking purposes, or even using those with that shotgun approach of kind of using them to identify and find those longer tail keywords along with the long tail? Or do you tend to focus more on long tail, or kind of, your strategy with kind of both of those?
Yeah, I will say that us personally uses both. So we start a campaign that's going to be like a ranking indexation style campaign, focusing on all those top keywords, top 5 to 10 keywords we really want to win. We'll run them in exact, broad phrase, different campaigns, because exact is going to be truly focused on ranking, broad phrase primarily for data collection. But we put them in their own campaigns so we can control the budget, because they aren't going to be as profitable, because it's much more expensive when you're competing against 1,000 other sellers for that placement. So if they're in their own campaign, I can put, a $1, $2, $3 a day budget on it, collect data in the kind of the background without hemorrhaging money. And then I'll take my long tail keywords and I'll put them in their own campaign for the exact same reason. And you mentioned it perfectly, 5 to 10 long tail keywords may drive 2 to 3 additional sales a month because they're lower impression, because more people are typing in socks than men's socks for running. Yeah. But when you have 5 to 600 long tail keywords, yes, that adds up to really drive incremental scale, and it's typically more profitable.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. To me, it just kind of like, once I kind of actually understand, because I think a lot of, from what I've seen, especially beginners, which in a way kind of still am, absolutely still learning. But even where I was like a year ago, which is completely different, kind of looking at a lot of different advertising, including Amazon advertising, is sort of almost like magic, where I feel, a lot of it is honestly common sense, to where if I'm like, okay, so I go to Amazon.com as a customer and I type in a certain keyword, like if I'm, if a lot more people are going to, to be typing in a much shorter keyword than a longer keyword, because it's more effort, and humans are lazy by nature. We want to, at least spend the least amount of energy and time on something to get the outcome that we want. So I just figure, okay. And then also, because it's so specific, less people would be bidding on it. It makes sense, conceptually, in my view, at least. I mean, it just seems to kind of like make sense. And you were one of the first to really bring that out. And then also, it was so funny. It was like, I read an article that Ray Dalio wrote, talking about how he invests in, and this is at the same time that I was reading your kind of article on LinkedIn about long tail keywords, and there's some, specific numbers and kind of case study that you had about that. That was very interesting. But how Ray Dalio, by diversifying, can actually reduce his risk by like a factor of 5 while still maintaining the exact same return. And in a way, it's not the exact same, but in a way, it made me think about long tail keywords. I'm like, oh my gosh, like there is this kind of similarity of, not just replacing, like, okay, I was, allocating this much budget toward this short tail keyword. Now I'm just, replacing with this. But you're replacing with kind of, or allocating budget, and hopefully you're also increasing and growing and all of that, but toward a whole host of long tail keywords. But yeah, it's very, again, I could go down like this whole, but yeah, it totally makes sense to me, and hopefully it makes sense to other people as well. But it's very interesting. It's worth, I think it's worth testing. And I guess that's the last question I have about long tail keywords specifically. And I'm sure I could have like 1,000 more, but when you kind of identify these long tail, potentially profitable keywords, do you only bid them as exact match, or do you also test long tail keywords as broad and phrase?
So when you do start going down this rabbit hole, it is very dependent on the minimal budget you have and what makes sense where to distribute it to. But in an ideal world, for all of our accounts, we've been in broad, phrase, and exact.
Even with those kind of longer tail, even like, for example, like
everything.
a 5. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Everything, because it just leads to more data collection. And, the performance can be vastly different. And just from some of the studies we did, Exact usually does have the best ACoS because it's exactly what they're typing in. So you know what you're trying to convert on. Broad typically has, 4 to 5% higher ACoS, but we've seen that, Broad and phrase drive much more in sales than Exact because they're winning more placements. So if you're bidding on socks, you're only showing up. Your ad's only showing up if someone types in socks. That's it. But if you bid on socks and broad and phrase, you're showing up for a lot more ad inventory in different placements. So we do it low cost to pay for testing if you have the proper bid management. There's no reason in our theories to only run an Exact.
Interesting. That's a really good, I think right now I have to double check. I think it depends on the campaign. Like I said, I'm testing a lot out, so it's a little bit messy. So I have to kind of go back and take a look, but that's very insightful. And I guess because there really are, I was reading this article about Alexa data and how that's all changing. There's that whole how that's kind of changing so much and very, very interesting. But how people speak in long tail keywords, right? It's not just and kind of the translation of taking that voice data and then translating it into converting, I should say, into text. And how there are these super long phrases. So if you did have, I guess, one of those longer tail phrases in phrase match or broad match, there are still even longer tail keywords defined from that. But I guess also at the same point, they could also perform differently within the Amazon algorithm as well. So interesting. I'm just kind of keeping in my head and.
No, you're fine. If I was a smaller seller and I had a very limited budget, I would recommend testing small and collecting as much data up front on a small batch of keywords. Because the only issue I do see is, let's say you launch 300 keywords and all of those bids are $1. And we personally we don't even make bid adjustments till at least 10 clicks. So that's $3,000 of spend right off the bat and potentially no sales because we don't have enough data.
If you only get like one click or, like on all instead of just those few, I definitely it's so funny as you're saying this. I wish I watched this video a year ago, because that's exactly what we, for some of our campaigns, I don't even know how many, hundreds of keywords. We were just like all these keywords. And we started off like with this mindset it was a very different mindset that we have now of just scaling and growing as much as we can, but of just kind of conserving and having, this fixed amount, very small budget originally for this product. And that budget was getting eaten by all these keywords over, and it took a long time for us to collect enough data. And by that point, we're very unprofitable. And we're just like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? All this kind of stuff. So that totally makes sense. That's very helpful. I wish I had a time machine. That's great. And then going on with mistakes and going down that line. So what's one of the biggest mistakes that you see Amazon sellers making, whether that's like mindset wise or optimization wise, or just general, something that comes to the top of your head of a mistake that you see a lot of Amazon sellers making in regards to Amazon PPC?
So I'm going to mention two, just because you mentioned kind of mindset wise versus optimization, and they're completely correlated. The biggest mistake I feel like I see in all accounts from small sellers to 8-figure sellers is not having proper bid management. And with that, not relying on the data. They'll make emotional decisions. They'll log in one day, they'll see their ACoS is 100%, even though in the last 7 days it's a 20%. They'll freak out and they're going to lower all their bids and over optimize, when in reality, attribution plays a role and all these other factors that you and I can rabbit hole in. But in general, make sure you have enough data to make a decision. I kind of touched on this earlier. We recommend, not even touching a bid until you have like 7 to 8 clicks. We have some keywords that have 50 clicks in one order, which is terrible conversion rate. But with the proper bid, almost any relevant keyword can be profitable. Like bid management is the number one lever in your business to make your PPC profitable. It's just having the right bid, and people don't manage it because they think it's the keyword that's important. When in reality, it's the price you're paying for that keyword. And we have the data to see that. So if you go in, and you have 5 clicks, one order and 100% ACoS, all you need to do is lower your bid. That's a great conversion rate. And then that's how you get a better ACoS.
Absolutely. No, and that was actually really, really insightful what you just said of, as long as it's relevant, that's kind of the key. But as long as that keyword truly is relevant, and you can especially see if it's relevant if you generated a sale from that, or you're generating at least, maybe 2 or more clicks, so someone didn't just accidentally click on it. And it's all about bid adjustment. And then that actually would bring me into, I know, again, there's some of your secret sauce that, we may not dive completely into, and we couldn't because we would not have enough time. But what are some of the ways that you go about optimizing your clients' campaigns that you've had success with? Or what are some of the metrics that you look at? I know you mentioned that you'll optimize, so if you say, okay, so our target ACoS or ACoS is 30%, and currently over the past whatever period, we've seen that it's at 100%, right? We've generated sales, great, but it's at 100%. We kind of want to reduce that. So you kind of showed, we tend to do that at least 7 or 8 clicks, or we like to see at least 10. I'm sure it depends on the product and the client. So number of clicks, you look at ACoS. Is there anything else that you kind of look at, or anything that kind of gives a tell, like with impressions or click-through rate or anything like that?
At a base level, I don't see impressions to be that big of a tell for anything Amazon advertising. I mean, if you're not getting a lot of impressions, you can make the assumption that you're not bidding high enough or as competitive, or you're not indexing on the back end. But I always see people ask in the group, I'm getting 3,000 impressions, but no clicks. What am I doing? And they make an assumption based off it. It's so incremental. We have no idea if that's showing on a product detail page, where it's showing because of Amazon. So I don't consider that important of a factor. To me, the biggest thing, especially for smaller sellers, is looking at the appropriate timeframes. Again, people look at past 24-hour, past 48-hour data because it's emotional and it's new. Don't recommend doing that unless you're just hemorrhaging spend. Then you can make an adjustment. But in general, Amazon, I believe, released the data at SellerCon a year or 2 ago that the majority of purchases happen, 2 to 3 days after a click. So if you go in one day and you see, today I've gotten 300 clicks but no orders, and then I pause everything, and then I wait 4 days, there's a good chance sales are going to start to come in later because of Amazon attribution. Most people don't realize it's like a 14-day time frame, 14 days on sponsor brands, maybe 30 days on sponsor products, something like that. But in general, look at the right time frames. Don't make adjustments based off of lifetime data. That's a big mistake I see made. People will hop in and be like, good, 20% ACoS in the last 12 months. And then I'll look at the last 30 days and it's 102. I'm like, no, so many things happen. As as a seller, you could, change your EBC and have an effect in conversion rate. That's directly going to affect your Amazon advertising. So proper timeframes, clicks, and ACoS.
In general, maybe outside of the kind of this COVID-19, this crazy, hopefully, singular phenomena that's kind of happened in this decade. Hopefully, God forbid this happens again. But this is obviously a very unique situation. But outside of this, obviously, there's still, with Q4, that's also a unique annual event that happens. That's probably a little bit different than the average or the norm. But what is kind of a time frame? And I'm sure it depends on the product and the time of year and things like that. But what's a good way to go about thinking about the proper time frame? And a couple things I'll mention, because I know you mentioned, a lot of people look at the lifetime. They're like, oh, this is awesome. We have very low ACoS and the other metrics are, exactly what we want. But then recently it's not been managed well, or things have kind of got out of hand. And at the same point, just looking within that 24 to 48 hour period, very short period, and seeing whether it's good, terrible, or great results, looking too soon or too kind of long, what is kind of like that sweet spot of, or how should someone go about determining the period of time to maybe to look through that makes sense.
Yeah.
I kind of tripped up on my words, but the correct time frame for optimizing.
Yeah. So what I typically do if I'm going to optimize a campaign by hand, I will, open the campaign in a different tab and then open it into a different tab. Exact same campaign in 3 different tabs. And I will look at last 30 days and then I'll look at last 7 days, but not including the last 48 hours, of course, because of attribution. We don't ever include the last 48 hours in pretty much any bid adjustments we make whatsoever. So we'll look at those 2 windows and we'll kind of make some comparisons. 30 days is what we at scale make optimizations based off twice a week. But if I'm personally going in account, I like to take into account the last 7 days again, especially with COVID. But in general, it's kind of nice to keep a touch point on, especially if you're a smaller seller, and those minor adjustments really make a difference.
Absolutely. No, that's actually really, yep. That's very insightful. So yeah, and I'm sure again, times can change and there'll be all, but that's something that I've been doing recently, kind of looking like, instead of just, I think a lot of people, especially Amazon sellers, or especially those who are starting off, that already have like all these things on their checklist to do, and kind of, they put Amazon PPC as a check item instead of something that requires a lot more effort and attention.
Constant maintenance.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, absolutely. And just kind of like, oh, what's the time frame? Like for example, they're looking for just what's the number? Like what is and then they just check it off on their list instead of looking at, like you said, kind of comparing and looking at 7 days, 30 days, maybe 45 days, looking at the different results based on the time frame, multiple different time frames, so just one.
Yeah.
So I would assume that's probably something important to look at, kind of multiple data instead of just, hearing something from someone in a Facebook group or on Reddit or on LinkedIn, checking a box and then calling it done.
Yep.
So that's good. Yep. That's very insightful to know. I appreciate you sharing that. Along with, we kind of briefly discussed, long tail keywords, the importance of time frame and optimizing for that time frame, which I completely understand and agree with. What are some other overlooked or maybe underutilized features or programs or whatever the correct terminology is with Amazon PPC right now? And also maybe something that is coming soon that Amazon sellers should maybe be aware of. So kind of those two things.
Yeah, in general, with sponsored products, targeting is just getting a little bit more incremental. We can now target by different targeting groups within an auto campaign. So if you launch an auto campaign, you're now not just optimizing the bid for that whole auto campaign. You can actually go as in depth as optimizing whether or not you're showing on a product detail page or in the search. So that's kind of a cool feature that allows us to get even more incremental and clean with our targeting, and we can be a little bit more scalable with that. So that's a pretty cool new feature. We've been recommending splitting up auto campaigns into 2 groups. So 2 auto campaigns per ASIN, one focusing on ASINs and the product detail page, which is substitutes and complements, and then one focusing on search. So it's going to give us keyword research, which is close match and loose match. Basically, we run auto campaigns for evergreen keyword research and product research. So by separating it out, it allows us, again, to incrementally scale either, rather than allowing Amazon to distribute our budget to just the one that's performing best. I want control over each of them individually. So that's cool. Biggest thing, if your sponsored products are in a good place, you feel comfortable with them, dive into sponsored display and dive into sponsored brands. If this is a long-term thing for you and building a brand is your goal, then we're getting more creative control. We're getting more abilities to write copy. We now are able to self-serve ads off of Amazon through sponsored display. So I think that you kind of mentioned it. PPC right now is just a check. Hey, this is done. This is launched, and it's 10 to 20 keywords. In general, we've made a business out of just managing Amazon advertising because it is so complex and needs so much management. So if you don't understand the foundational aspects, I would try to learn it, because outsourcing to someone when you don't even understand the foundation is going to be complicated. And if this is a long-term game for you, PPC is going to become that much more important and exponentially more complicated over the next year. So either learn now or constantly play catch up.
Absolutely. A few things there that I think are awesome. And I agree with, after going through some pain myself, or my wife and I going through some pain, a couple questions that I had that I want to kind of jump on that you kind of just mentioned. So one is this underutilized strategy with the auto campaigns. So now with the ability to kind of target specifically on, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know there's like 4 specific different, if you go into your auto campaign, go to the ad group, then you can see kind of the 4 different targeting options that you have, specifically substitutes, complements, things like that, that you just kind of mentioned, just so people, in my own mind, make sense, and then others do as well, that you kind of recommend testing where you break out, have 2 different auto campaigns, one where you target 2 of those placements so that you ultimately show up more on the product detail page, and the other specifically more for search. Is that correct?
Correct.
Gotcha.
And if you just hover over the little question mark, it'll tell you where each ad shows. One of them's in search, one of them's on the product detail page.
Perfect. That's something that I'm going to do today. I'm going to test that out. So that was a really great nugget. I forgot what else I was going to ask, but I'm sure it's going to come up here in a second. Oh yeah, and that is, it actually is perfect. It goes into our next question. And that is that you mentioned the importance, which I completely agree with, of at least learning the basics. What I find is a lot of, because I deal with, by the way, like my audience, it tends to be a lot more beginner Amazon sellers. Like I said, my goal is just to share everything of what I've learned thus far, and I'm always learning more. And I remember when I started off, as a lot of people do, selling physical products online, even on Amazon, is not easy. There's a lot of different moving parts, from product research to logistics to SEO and all of these things, right? And that's part of the reason a lot of people treat Amazon PPC as more of a checklist item than something that requires a lot more attention and kind of pruning and tilling. And when we started off, we're like, oh, Amazon PPC, oh my gosh, like we have to learn all this or whatever. Let's just go hire an expert, right? So we spent for all of our products, it was $2,000 a month is what we ended up paying for this, quote unquote expert. And I'm not going to say names or anything like that, to manage our campaigns. Didn't do a very good job, at least didn't meet our expectations, I should say that. And we felt that we had some pretty clear expectations. Did not meet our expectations even close. Ended up, discontinuing after I think 5 months, because that's as soon as the contract kind of ended. And then that was the point to where I was like, okay, I need to just quit being lazy and learn this. And that's really what it came down to for me. Not saying that about other people. That was for us for sure. And I'm so thankful that I did. And there's still obviously so much to learn. I mean, you're already giving me information that I'm going to use to improve my campaigns, and things are always changing. But I completely agree. What a lot of sellers do, myself included, is we automatically look to somebody else to solve our problems, which can be obviously extremely valuable and beneficial because you help people immensely with their campaigns. But I completely agree with you in learning the basics first. And doing it yourself, then you might find, wow, I can actually get pretty great results on my own, or at least learn the basics enough to where, like, okay, now I understand how this works. This isn't magic. And you kind of know questions that you can ask an agency when you go to hire an agency or partner with, somebody else specifically for Amazon advertising. That's just something, and that's with Amazon PPC or anything else. Learning basic graphic design skills and all this is something that it's very, very important. So I definitely agree with you on that. Obviously, you may find, wow, this is actually a lot harder than I thought. I need a lot more help, and you hire somebody out, or you at least know the questions to ask and understand how it works before kind of sourcing it out. So I completely agree with you on that. I got burned by kind of just immediately trying to outsource to somebody else without understanding anything. I think that's really great especially for beginners, for someone just starting off on Amazon.
Yeah.
So, and then that actually kind of dovetails into the next 2 questions. So that's one, what is one of your biggest tips for someone's even new to selling on Amazon, and then definitely new to Amazon PPC? What are your recommendations for them? Specifically, maybe where are some really great resources for them just starting off to learn Amazon PPC, some of the basics?
Yeah, definitely. The biggest thing I can kind of recommend is find someone who's, there's a lot of free content out there. Honestly, you can probably learn enough just off of YouTube and finding the correct resources. Find people who's successful and ask who they listen to. But in general, even when it comes to outsourcing, find someone who resonates with your style. I think that's a really big thing, because kind of like you mentioned, you had pretty clear ground rules of what your expectations were, and those weren't met. Well, those expectations are so different across seller, across agencies. I've kind of mentioned our focus is on scalability. So if you want a sub 10% ACoS and the most minimum amount of spend possible, probably not going to be a good fit. So find people who align with your strategy. I'd be weary to go anyone that's makes any definitive statements that are just really out there, things like that. Don't love that type of style and philosophy. Find someone who's really able to just kind of give back and assist with you and resonates with what you're looking to do on the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very good point. I completely going through what I went through. I definitely agree with that. And wish I knew some of this. So that's great. Another question that a lot of especially new Amazon sellers have, and this is something that I had, is again this kind of mindset of, wow, I already learned so much. I'm stressed out. I've got kids. I've got, I got a lot else going on. I have my life. And Amazon PPC is kind of like a checklist. Is there some software, some magic software that could just automate everything for me and just get a ridiculously low, highly profitable ACoS and all this kind of thing? So one is kind of so obviously that's kind of a leading question, because with that, I'm sure I already know your answer to that, but are there any, what is kind of the right perspective when looking for an Amazon kind of PPC, quote unquote, automation tool like, what do you feel overall? Are there any tools that you use in terms of kind of those software tools? Just kind of the way to go about that. Like, what do what should someone look for in an automation tool? What are your feelings overall? If there's any tools that you use, so kind of all that in one. Sorry.
Yeah, no, in general, we personally have just built our own tools. So we utilize bulk uploads and macros for everything from, keyword research, bid optimizations, things like that. I know Mina and like Samer kind of talk about this a lot. Bulk uploads is really kind of, if you have time, the best solution because you can automate in a way a lot of that management. But if you don't have time to learn bulk uploads, 100%, Mina would kill me for even recommending this, but bid optimization, again, is the most important part. And if you don't have time to go in and do it, find, some type of software that is just for optimizing bids. Now, for a one-stop solution, it's impossible, none out there. And that's not because of softwares, that's because of how the API is structured. So API releases on Amazon's end are typically delayed. So Sponsor Brands video was released 7 months ago. The API for it was released 14 days ago. So all of us sellers who are managing our ads personally have been able to run video by ourselves and optimize it. Everyone who's relying 100% on a software solution just now got that ability. So you can never fully outsource. You either have to manage with the assistance of software or fully manage yourself, and at that point dive into bulk uploads and learn how to structure and create more efficiency.
Yep. I think that's exactly, yep. You answered exactly the question that I was trying to ask. So that was perfect. Definitely that the idea that, and I completely agree with this, there's not just some tool that's going to do all the work for you and just magically make everything work. Right. Yeah. Then that would make, you irrelevant, everyone else irrelevant. Right. And it's not that exists and that people don't want to talk about it. No, it does not. And that's something, try different tools. They can be helpful, like you said. I definitely agree with this, in assisting, but in terms of just finding a tool that will solve all your problems, I think you would agree that there is no tool out there that's just going to do that.
No, and Amazon's going in a much more creative direction in general. So until the tools are able to write, highly relevant copy, create our imagery that needs uploaded, things like that, it just doesn't make sense.
That is a really good perspective as well. Definitely kind of the robust nature of advertising. Instead of just taking your listing and basically, showing it at certain positions or product pages or wherever. But I know with my own advertising, with the, if I'm using this terminology correctly, the headline search ads, I saw that there's like the beta for image that we kind of jumped on to kind of test something in Canva and uploaded it. But I started, and then a little bit of copy. And even though they're kind of small now, I'm excited for that as well. I think that's, I'm pumped. But that's a really good point. And that was a really good point that I didn't know about with kind of the API calls of being able to kind of collect that data as a tool or pull that, it's delayed in terms of when tools are even able to access that data. So very, very good perspective. You answered a question that I was trying to ask because I know it's been a long week. So that is really helpful. Just a few more questions that myself and some others desperately want the answer to. Oh yeah. What are your feelings on, I was going to ask this earlier, but what are your feelings on auto campaigns during product launch? I'm pretty sure you just posted about this on Facebook this morning, but I know I was going to ask you anyway. So I didn't read it, but I'm just curious to your perspective on that.
Yeah. So we've seen really dependent results and we've had some incredible feedback on that post. A lot of people have jumped in with what they're seeing. In general, I don't recommend running them immediately off a launch unless, you have invested a ton in the most fantastic SEO oriented copy in the world and you're sure Amazon knows what your product is. The main reason is auto campaigns take time to improve. It takes data collection. So if you launch immediately and then you have an auto campaign, Amazon's not 100% sure what to index your product for because they don't have the data. So what they're going to do is they're going to show your auto campaign ads across, 50, 100 different placements, and they're going to justify those clicks in order to collect data, regression analysis, figure out what has the highest, R squared value, and then start showing your ad. And, that's fine and dandy because you're collecting data. But I know what my product is personally. I know what keywords are the most relevant. So in my opinion, I think it's easier to start a manual campaign with the relevant keywords I know, allow Amazon to collect that data organically, and then through my sponsored product manual campaign, and then start the auto campaign. And I mean, it's either or. You can start the auto campaign immediately and understand that you're investing in data and it's going to take longer to optimize, or you can wait launch your manual campaigns. Once Amazon starts understanding your indexation, launch an auto campaign. So depends on your data collection methodology.
Yep, definitely makes sense. And you may not have the answer to this, but kind of the first time I ever heard about this of like not using an auto or even kind of the dangers of using it was actually from Brandon Young, something that he posted. And again, you may not have specifically the answer to this, and he may not even know, just kind of based on what he's heard from other sellers and things like that, of how an auto campaign could actually hurt your indexation with Amazon and kind of the A9 algorithm. Have you heard anything about that? So instead of not just like kind of, waiting that might be a longer period of time or in terms of the data collection side, but actually maybe even being harmful to your listing over the long term. It's something that he kind of, again, he didn't say this definitively, and I don't want to take anything out of context. But
yeah, no, I'm very familiar with Brandon's launch strategy. That's actually one of the reasons that we kind of started to dabble into this is because of Brandon and I were both on Samers Live. So we started diving into a lot of the theories there and kind of his methodologies behind it. And we've never analyzed the data on having a poor click-through rate on your organic indexation and ranking, because I personally think that there's too many other factors to officially correlate. But he works, with smaller data sets with his own products where he does track organic rank and indexation. So 100%, that's kind of how we aligned his strategy, was based off that similar methodology. Don't have the data necessarily to back it, but in my opinion, Amazon's all about the consumer experience. And if the consumer is seeing ads that aren't relevant and have really poor click-through rate, I could see how it at least affects, the quality score of your ad.
For sure. Absolutely. Nope. Definitely makes sense. That's very insightful. I think there's going to be a lot of people, because it's still, I don't think, out there kind of in the mainstream, where still there's a lot of people who have no idea. I know I did the first time Brandon mentioned, I'm like, I never thought about this. And I had the newest product that we launched, basically the way that we found it, it actually really made sense. This might be insightful to you, but I'm sure you have plenty of other data points to work with. But we found this product basically and this is how we're launching future products, is we'll look at basically what is selling well on other platforms like eBay, Etsy, etc. We look at Google search volume, and basically where's their demand, what are people searching for online, period, that they can't find on Amazon, right? Or there's very limited or few options. Then we've launched, so we launched this product. There's one other similar option, but none of its exact kind. And we've run auto campaigns with all of our products. And this one in particular, our auto campaign is consistently, we ran it from the beginning. Right after we launched, then we read Brandon's post and was like, oh my gosh, well, it's kind of too late now, all that. But the auto campaign really hasn't, it's performed very differently than our other auto campaigns. Definitely not driving as many, I have to take a look at all the numbers, but definitely much higher ACoS. I've seen some of the data of impression data, all of that is just kind of very, very skewed and very different. And it definitely makes sense in terms of, I don't think Amazon really even understands the product itself, or especially when it was starting off, because it's just kind of new and all of that. So that's something I've seen kind of firsthand. And because of that, it was kind of all this in the same month. I'm like, okay, I'm not running auto campaigns, just even to be safe. Like, I'm okay. I can, I'll wait. And when would kind of be, because I know you mentioned until, maybe when Amazon begins to be able to categorize your product correctly, I may not be using the correct terminology, but when would a seller kind of know, or when would it be kind of apparent that, okay, Amazon understands my product, or it's categorizing it correctly? Is there a certain time frame, a certain metric or set of metrics that someone could look at?
So I posted a video walkthrough on this, like you said, yesterday. Okay. But something that I've been recommending sellers to look at is start a manual campaign and look at your related keywords Amazon's giving you. In the example I posted, I found the exact same product on Amazon. One of them had 0 reviews. One of them had 200 reviews. Same shape, everything, exact same product. And I looked at the relevant keywords for it. And the one without 0 reviews, it gave me 18 keywords. And they were extremely broad and top of the funnel. I looked at the product that had a lot of reviews in history. And my relevant keywords were 100. And they were extremely relevant. So in my mind, I can make the assumption that Amazon understands my product if they're showcasing me relevant keywords. So at that point is when I'd run an auto.
Absolutely. Great point. So kind of get to the point of where you're kind of creating a new campaign. You kind of type in, you get to the section where you're kind of targeting, specific keywords, and you just see what Amazon suggests, the Amazon suggested keywords and kind of what they show.
Yeah.
And if they're way off, then okay, so it's not okay. Very.
Yep.
Yep. Very good. That now I know exactly kind of what to do. Okay, that's very, very helpful. I'm sure that's. And by the way, if this is helpful, let us know in the comments. And if you have questions, let us know as well. You mentioned you posted this. I know you have a lot of content, LinkedIn, Facebook. So we want to make sure I'm going to include links to all of her stuff. Honestly valuable. That's again what we started the conversation with. It's why, Destaney, you're on, and I really appreciate the time. Is you actually provide valuable info, so it's not just going to waste your time. It's not just to upsell you on your services, which I'm sure there may be people watching where that would work out really well, and others where it isn't the best fit. So yeah, be sure to follow her at Facebook, LinkedIn, everywhere. We'll make sure we have the links in the description section of wherever you're watching this. And just a couple more questions. By the way, you've already answered, which is awesome. Yep, last two questions. So one is, as an Amazon, or I would consider this of you, I know you're a student always learning, but you're an expert in my eyes. So where does an Amazon PPC expert like you stay on top of all of these changes? Where are some of the best resources of information that you kind of maybe look at on a weekly or daily basis?
I spend a ton of time in accounts. That is going to be the best way for anyone to learn, because again, no one can tell you how to run your strategy. Even us as Amazon advertising managers, we have to work extremely close with our accounts to make sure we're making the right decisions, because I can recommend what's right for you based off Amazon advertising perspective, but if it's not right for your brand, it's not a good fit. So biggest thing, stay in your account and test, even if it's low bid, low budgets. That's kind of the biggest thing. Follow again people who are extremely relevant in your niche or who speak your language, things like that. In terms of like resources or anything, I stay close with just anything Amazon does, announces, account reps, things like that. If I come across, like I have my network of people that I work really closely with, I build relationships with. That's probably one of the biggest aspects. Ask questions. Samers Group's a great example. It does so well because it's not just people posting, like you said, generalized high level content. Samers Group does well because people aren't afraid to ask questions and build relationships. So that's going to be the biggest piece of advice for me, is like find people you enjoy, you like, reach out to them and ask them questions.
Absolutely. So are there, and then, and of course you don't have to give too much detail into this, but so are there, kind of reps in Amazon that you can kind of call up and be like, hey, I saw this kind of new announcement or this new thing that might be coming out. What is your perspective on that? Or do you have the kind of contacts within Amazon that you can kind of rely on or?
Yeah, we're in the Amazon partner program. So that means we're a preferred partner for Amazon advertising. If you guys are familiar with, how Google does it with their agency perspective, that's the direction Amazon's going. So I do have like a personal point of contact that I reach out to anytime I run into any issues within accounts, beta access to things. They're really informative in that aspect. And then even when your account gets to a certain size, you get to like $100,000 a month in sales, and you'll typically have a rep reach out to you if you're in like a really strong category. And they'll work really closely with you. And it's not like a paid program or anything. The rep is truly there to kind of advise and typically upsell. But they could offer a lot of advice if you can get past the upsell.
Oh yeah, I imagine. Yeah, I've reached out to in the past before I got into Amazon. Did a lot of marketing for smaller businesses, and that was actually my major was marketing and business analytics. So we did a lot of Facebook ads, Google ads, things like that before we ultimately got into Amazon. And I had a couple reps with the size of a couple of my clients, which I was very thankful for, kind of reach out and network with them. But that's awesome. I don't have that personally, but maybe that's something to kind of work towards, something that I'm going to start thinking about and start reaching out. But that's great. Last random question. Probably should have saved this one for the last. But that is a personal question that I had, and that is, and correct me if I'm not using the correct terminology, but for headline search ads, have you seen better results directing toward a product page or to a storefront? And I might not be using the correct terminology, but.
No, that's perfect. That's what my webinar this morning was on. It was like an hour-long webinar directly on sponsored brands and sponsored display.
Where can people find that webinar? Was that on Facebook?
Yeah, I'll be posting it. It will be live on Wednesday, I believe. So I'll definitely be posting some links for people to join, but it's a very intermediate. It's not crazy in depth. I walk through all the specifics, custom image beta, my copy recommendations, things like that. But in general, to answer your question, the biggest thing we kind of have found is your landing page is better especially for smaller brands. What we find, if you drive them to a store page, it gives them the ability to click around, and they might not necessarily click on the landing page of your product detail page, Because what we found is, your store pages, you add videography and you add all these things, and it gives them the ability to kind of think more. And it's not always a good thing when you give your consumer that opportunity. With a landing page, they drive straight to the landing page. Then they can click directly into the product detail page and purchase. Extremely simple consumer funnel. Now, if you're driving towards broad traffic, like maybe you're Nike and you're bidding on the search term apparel, it would 100% make sense to drive into a store page because you want them to see all your products.
Yeah.
Or if you sell a bubble wand for kids and you're bidding on toys, maybe drive into your store page because it's broader, it's more top of funnel. You want them to see all of your toys. But if you're bidding precisely on the exact keywords, drive into a landing page with just those products. Don't make it more complex for them.
Yep. No, it definitely makes sense. And of course, you can always test and all that as well, which I think is, I know you mentioned before, the importance of testing, which completely true. And now with HSA, I mean, with that kind of the image beta, with the copy, being able to kind of run more formal A/B tests, which is something I really do need to kind of get into. And I'm definitely going to be watching your webinar, and we'll make sure that we have resources for that. I'm definitely going to check that out and probably going to be making a lot of changes to my own advertising, which is awesome. And then, I think that was the last kind of question. Like I said, people will probably be commenting here, Destiny, if you want to, check in and respond to comments here, you can do that. But really the best way to reach out to Destiny is on her own accounts. I know you're on LinkedIn, Facebook. Really appreciate your time here. So what are the best ways for people to kind of learn more about you, consume content from you, learn more about what you do, kind of all of that? Because I'm sure there's people dying to kind of, reach out to you with some of their questions.
Yeah, 100%. So again, LinkedIn and Facebook is where I post the majority of my content. Anything really high level in-depth walkthrough, we post on YouTube. My whole team posts a ridiculous amount of content. So in general, like it's very precise. Like Taylor Binnerud, is constantly posting about bulk uploads, bid management, everything that's extremely, extremely analytical. Kyle's always posting about anything that's about like brand awareness, back end stuff. He's a freaking genius in that aspect.
Wow.
I think Gabriel is just incredible with just generalized strategy, and he kind of speaks a lot of content just like I do, and like giving you full walkthroughs on the day-to-day stuff like that. So none of what we do is like salesy. I will be like I always like don't want people to think I'm trying to like push them to our page to like have that type of reaction, but no, it's like everything we do is like we truly want to help people and help drive the better results. I mean, in the long run, the better people are Amazon advertisers, the better it is for everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I can be a personal, I said this in the beginning, but and I mean this. Yeah, you honestly, you're one of the few people that I've actually followed with the level of knowledge that you have and the willingness to share what you know. It's not common. So, and that's, we want to bring someone common on this channel. We would never do that. So definitely check out her socials. And then also, like you mentioned, just so I'm clear too, because I'm going to be checking out this content as well. Post a lot of blog content, newsletter, sign up for that. I'm going to be signing up. So you'll see my email.
Yes, 100%.
Awesome. No, that's so great. All of those resources, we'll make sure that we include wherever you're watching this. I'm going to be uploading to a few places. It'll be right here around this video. So that's all the questions that I have. Again, I'm sure others will have more. You know exactly where to find Destiny. Again, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope everyone that's watching appreciates this and has gotten some ridiculous value and able to really scale up their Amazon PPC advertising. So Destiny, thank you again. Hope to have you on sometime in the future, and wishing you an awesome weekend.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.